24. The marvelous biological remote sensing, telesthesia, and telepathy. Let's first look at the following cases. Case 1. Huiyan reported in 4 flowers and 4 dragons, the story of 2 quadruplets. If one of the quadruplets catches a cold, the other 3 will surely have a fever. 3 brothers yawned in step with each other, with 3 little mouths opening simultaneously. They uttered ah sonorously, as if proclaiming their manliness. Case 2. There is a report called the unexpected reunion of kindred, the details of which I cannot remember very well. It relates the reunion of a mother and daughter after a separation of more than 4 decades. Under a strange combination of circumstances, the daughter was adopted by other people. So she took the foster mother for her birth mother, and indeed she did not know that she had a natural mother, who was now old and lived alone, knowing nothing about her only child, who had been separated from her since very young. A curious coincidence brought the daughter into an out-of-the-way alley, where she coincidentally met with an old lady. Because she had accidentally helped the old lady, she was invited by the old lady into her humble hut, where she accidentally saw a picture on the wall of the old lady when she was young. She was astonished because her foster mother had given her a photo, which had been placed at the bottom of a box for decades. The photo on the wall was the same as the one she had placed at the bottom of a box. After talking with the old lady, she came to know that the old lady in front of her was none other than her own mother. The mother and the daughter felt both misery and happiness. Thanks to the mercy of heaven, the old mother had eventually found her daughter that she missed every day. Case 3. Dead body returns home reported that when the famous American actor Charles Cleveland died in 1899, he was buried in Galveston, Texas. The next year, a hurricane flooded the cemetery. The family of the deceased searched everywhere, but with no result. However, 28 years later in September 1927, this magical coffin mysteriously reappeared. It drifted for 3,000 kilometers and arrived at the homeland of Cleveland, Prince Edward Island. Case 4. According to the omens of mice house moving, after World War II, Mr. and Mrs. Raymond Macy, who were in the film industry in New York, rented an apartment at No. 80 Street of East Borough. One day Mrs. Macy spotted from the window on the 2nd floor that many mice were pouring out in full force from the house opposite, running out as fast as they could. Shortly after, the old lady living in the opposite house died of suicide. After the death of the old lady, the mice returned in troops to the house. Some time later, a blonde dancing fashionably dressed girl moved in, who was often accompanied by a young man. One day the flock of mice once again fled from the house. A few days later, this young man died of a heart attack. After the death of the young man, the dancing girl moved out. Strange enough, the mice once again returned to their old home. A short time later, a young industrialist took residence in the house. After a period of peace, those mice left the house for another time. Mrs. Macy has a hunch that something unexpected might happen again. True enough, this young industrialist died in a plane crash. It is said that the house was built by a famous lawyer who suffered from lunacy shortly after the building was completed and eventually killed himself by jumping into the Hudson River. Case 5. According to the report of the miraculous biological telesthesia, as early as the last century, Professor Gregory of Edinburgh University had introduced an experiment of Berua. In the experiment, Berua divided the 50 snails into 25 pairs. Each pair was separated from the other pairs. After some time, the same letter was written on the shells of each pair of snails, and one of the pair was brought to America, the other still remained in Paris. Later, at a given time, the snail staying in Paris was stimulated with electric current. At the same time, the one brought to America also exhibited the same electric stimulation reactions. Alright, let's just take the above examples to explore what remote sensing, and perception are all about. Remote sensing. First, I'd like to make it clear that the remote sensing I am talking about is purely biological remote sensing, which is different from the electromagnetic wave remote sensing, sonar remote sensing, and geophysical field remote sensing applied in aviation, spaceflight, navigation, meteorology, mapping, global positioning, resources survey, environmental protection, disaster prevention, hydrology, and geology, and archaeology. In the mythological novel Fengshen Bang, There are two extraordinary individuals named Xianli 1,000-mile eye, and Shunfeng Er, wind-piercing ear. Their abilities allow them to perceive everything happening in Jiangxia's military camp from a distant location. The mice's behavior in Case 4 is an example of animal remote sensing. The special ability of remote clairvoyance frequently mentioned in the science of Qigong is also a kind of remote sensing. Then, what is remote sensing? Remote sensing is a biological ability to perceive the condition of a distant person, object, or scenery by receiving the thought waves or electromagnetic waves emitted by them through directional thinking. Remote sensing is not a mysterious phenomenon but rather a resonant frequency, just like a television channel that receives electromagnetic signals of live broadcasting transmitted by a TV station and informs us of the happenings in a different place, or like a radio that picks up the frequency of a certain radio station and broadcasts the clear voice of the announcer. Remote sensing is a natural phenomenon in the universe, but its occurrence is very unusual. Strictly speaking, the scenes described in science fiction are not sheer fabrications but a reality that has transcended time and space. Some people can accurately predict the future because they have actually mastered the technology of remote sensing. For example, the French Dr. Nostradamus, the eccentric Dorothy, Sakyamuni, and so on. The death of Russian Tsar Ivan at the end of the 16th century had been accurately predicted by 60 Russian prophets 12 days prior to his death. It is said that some people had given up the journey on Titanic for remote sensing its forthcoming disaster. There are a lot of prophecies in the Bible, the Quran, and the Sutra. Actually, these prophecies are a kind of remote sensing. My description of the 36-dimensional space is also the result of remote sensing. Explanations regarding the origin of the universe, the origin of humanity, and the origin of life are merely perceptions beyond time and space based on spiritual intuition. They do not rely on my meager knowledge or logical reasoning. From a scientific perspective, my arguments and evidence may be insufficient, but I believe that humanity will eventually know that what I am saying is correct. The number of people with the ability of remote sensing cannot be too many, just like there can be only several queen bees in a swarm of bees. The world will fall into chaos if everyone is capable of remote sensing. So I shall drop the topic here. If you are capable of remote sensing, it is your good luck. Sensation. Sensation is a physiological phenomenon, and it refers to a kind of physiological transmission of perception that goes unnoticed. The most unique example is the arrival of milk after childbirth. Taking humans as an example, regardless of how full a woman's breasts are, and despite engaging in sexual activities countless times, even after being pregnant for 10 months, milk will not appear until the child is born. Only the physiological response triggered by the baby's need for milk after birth leads to the abundant production of milk. This is similar to the tear glands secreting tears. Tears are only produced when a foreign object enters the eye or when there is a significant emotional fluctuation. Cases 1, 2, and 5 are examples of biological sensation. Remote sensing can be acquired through conscious cultivation, while sensation is an unconscious physiological behavior, a physiological mechanism, and a natural program designed by the greatest creator. In this regard, we don't need to pay excessive attention. Telepathy. Telepathy is a universal phenomenon in the universe. Everything has telepathy. Strictly speaking, all activities of life forms are the result of telepathy. More accurately, all the phenomena we see are the result of telepathy. The macrocosmic universe is the result of telepathy, and the microcosmic universe is also the result of telepathy. Both organic and inorganic substances are capable of telepathy. Humans, animals, plants, and insects have telepathy. Mountains, rocks, rivers, and weather are all capable of telepathy. The effective evidence for the telepathy of microscopic matter can be found in the fact that the famous Buddhist master Jinkong cited on many occasions the Japanese scientist's research on the crystal of water molecules when expounding on Mahayana's Sutra of Infinite Life. He said that when we say thanks and love to water, the arrangement of water molecules will be a very beautiful crystal, and that when we are hostile and indifferent to it, the arrangement of water molecules will be a chaotic assemblage. Hence, Master Jinkong told us that since the human body is 70% water, as long as we show more care for water in our body, then the water molecules in our body will act effectively, and we will increase our health. We may be free from illness all our life. He went further to enlighten us that since 70% of the earth is covered by water, as long as we don't pollute the rivers, lakes, and oceans, the earth will not be inflicted with floods, inundations, droughts, and hailstones. Like the gravitation between everything, the telepathy between everything exists and occurs everywhere and at any time. The most obvious examples are electromagnetic induction, sound wave induction, photoelectric induction, and so on. Now there are automatic doors in cities around the globe. The door closes when a person leaves and opens when a person approaches. Some street lamps will be automatically turned on when it becomes dark and will be automatically turned off when dawn breaks. Some anti-theft devices will automatically set off alarms when a person enters a security zone. Telepathy between life forms happens at every moment. In case 1, the quadruplets will all have a fever as long as one of them catches a cold. When one yawns, the others will open their mouths simultaneously. The same phenomenon occurs with twins and multibirths. Different degrees of telepathy occur at any moment between mother and daughter, father and son, lovers and enemies. The abnormal behaviors of animals before earthquakes, the pain in joints suffered by arthritis patients before heavy rain, the frantic movements of insects before storms, the suicidal behavior of plants like bamboo prior to a disaster, and the sudden fidgets and vexations experienced by people occasionally are all results of telepathy. 2 days ago, November 30, 2003, I ran into a former colleague of mine. He had rented a luxury villa with a courtyard where 4 rows of grapevines, each 30 meters long, grew. He told me that the grapevines had not produced grapes for many years, but after he began to live in the villa, he watered the grapevines every 3 days, applied fertilizers, hoed up weeds, and dug up the soil. Now the grapevines are heavily laden with grapes, and he can earn a handsome sum of money from them alone. He said excitedly, plants will repay when they get enough care and protection from humans. This is also a kind of telepathy. In front of the window of the master bedroom in my yard, there is a tree whose name is unknown to me. It blooms small white and purple flowers, which emit a strong fragrance when the tree is in full bloom. One year, when I stood in front of the flowers, I muttered to myself, "These flowers are so beautiful and fragrant. How wonderful it would be if the tree is in bloom every day. It would be very good if the tree can flower many more times every year." 3 months later, the tree was in bloom once again. I asked the gardener, Gift, who had worked in this compound for nearly 10 years, whether this tree would flower twice every year. He replied, "No, it flowers only once every year, and I don't know why it has flowered twice this year." Suddenly, I realized that it was my wish that had prompted it to flower one more time. I felt very guilty. This is a flower tree with great spiritual nature. To satisfy my private needs, it has overstretched itself against the law of nature. It must have tried hard. The second time, the flowers had such a faint fragrance that one could hardly smell it. This is the result of overspending. I apologized in my mind, flower tree, I am deeply indebted to you for your kindness. I understand you now. Please don't overdo yourself again in the future. Meanwhile, Lifechanyuan will try its best to protect you and all the flowers, grass, and trees. You are silently dedicated to mankind, flowering to beautify the environment, bearing fruits for people to savor, afforesting to conserve water and soil, exhaling oxygen, and inhaling carbon dioxide to purify the environment, and photosynthesizing to create nourishment carbohydrates for humans and animals. Without you, there would be no insects, animals, and humans. You are the foundation on which life depends. Lifechanyuan will make it its tenet to protect the lives of all living things. We humans should no longer be arrogant, conceited, and ungrateful. There is telepathy between plants and humans, as well as telepathy between humans and gods. I have a friend whose father was nearly 80 years old. He was kind-hearted, amicable, and genial, and very healthy in Zimbabwe. However, there was a period when he was vexed and troubled, insisting on returning home to his homeland in China. My friend had no choice but to send him back. Soon after, the old man passed away in his sleep. Why did the old man feel anxious and eager to return home when he was enjoying a very good life in Zimbabwe? This is the beckoning of the gods. Although he did not know it, the old man had experienced telepathy physiologically. Moreover, telepathy also occurs in many of our daily recreational activities. Last month, November 2003, my wife and I played poker games with some friends for 6 hours. The cards in our hands were very bad from beginning to end. Our friends had climbed over several mountains while my wife and I were still fixed at the starting point. Finally, I realized it was because my wife and I felt upset and distracted several days before. When one's mind is disturbed, the cards will also be a mess. Only if one has a calm mind will they get very good and orderly cards. You can try it if you're interested. Recently, another case of telepathy happened to me. I have the habit of reading reader. Once I read several articles by the Taiwanese writer Lifechanyuan and discovered that Mr. Lin has a very high spiritual nature. As far as I can tell, however ignorant I may be, Mr. Lin is one of the people with the highest spiritual nature in the Chinese nation. I consider it great luck and happiness to read more of his books. However, I am abroad and have very little chance to buy his books. I never expected that recently a girl of my children's generation came from China and brought me 2 books written by Mr. Lin, Search the Homeland of Soul. Why did she buy books instead of anything else for me? Why did she buy Lifechanyuan's book instead of other books? It turned out that this was a result of my telepathy. Seth said, physiological symptoms are communications from the inner self, indications that we are making mental errors of one kind or another. In other words, physical symptoms are a response of the body to psychological and spiritual ailments. All the wars, conflicts, natural disasters, and diseases in human history are the result of the mutual influence between gods, humans, animals, and plants. The Great Flood in the time of Noah was also a consequence of the induction caused by human conceit and arrogance. Remote sensing, sensation, and telepathy are all embodiments of Tao as described by Lao Tzu in Tao Te Ching. Tao is an embodiment of the spirit of the greatest creator. Ultimately, remote sensing, sensation, and telepathy are programs designed by the greatest creator to maintain the balance of nature. We can hence feel the unfathomable profundity of the greatest creator's wisdom.